Otherwise, this whole little canyon spot here is cool, very cool. I mean, out of the wind, great place to lay down your topper cloth, take a nap. I asked permission to come in. I don't intend to do any damage. I will leave soon. Okay, well, the cool thing about this little cave is that there's a skylight. Isn't that amazing? It's a little heart-shaped skylight, actually. It's just darling. Someone has perhaps deliberately put a few rocks in there to make it that sort of heart shape. I don't know. I'm going to zoom in on it so it will clarify a bit for you. Yeah, isn't that sweet? Anyhow, what else we got here? Not seeing anything except lots of goat poop. Nope. Feels like just a very nice little spot for a rest. Show you back there at the cave we just came up through. Wonderful little canyon. Although I have not yet really seen any evidence of human trail here. Well, I just came up out of the cave down there. I believe you can see it. And the little side cave with its heart light. And I came up onto the lower ridge below it. And as I did, I was scanning the area. And sure enough, I noticed another trail. Okay, doesn't look like much when you're here, but it was an old trail, a fairly wide foot trail, and there are shoulders, rocks thrown onto either side, and some small rocks laid down as a base to walk on. Turn around and show you the trail as it runs east. It's very faint, but it was a very well-made trail. There's a lot of its shoulders have been rolled into the roadway, but it's nonetheless it's a fairly wide trail. It's like two people abreast could walk on this road. So we're gonna just walk along here a little bit and see where it goes. Little plates along the side were deliberately stood up as a border. I mean, it's basically wide enough for a cart if all the debris was thrown out of the way. I guess you could consider it a cart path, but it seems somewhat narrower than the one we were looking at up there. Perhaps this was an even older one. Yeah, definitely a climb now, and it gets into a rougher section, and basically in a few more feet gets run over by the fresh lava. It must have been very disappointing for people to put this much work out for a trail. We're talking hours and days of hand lifting of boulders and putting down little stones and stuff. And then suddenly have lava come, you know, and just sort of pile it up. That. Well, I'd say it's about time to get out of the rain. Wouldn't you? Let's do it. Well, here we are back in the shelter cave. Out of the rain, nice and dry. Just like people that used to live out here in these caves. They were the best homes you could have. Dry, out of the wind. So I think it's an excellent time while I, a modern person, am using this cave for the same reasons that people used them way back in the early days. To acknowledge that there may be a time in the near future when the boat stops coming and the supplies run low, and even though you may be sitting in a nice condominium or suburban house or, you know, a little ranch house someplace out on the side of the mountain, there could easily come a time when, because of social unrest, being too far from sources of food and water, that you actually have to leave your comfortable dwelling and go live someplace just like this, in a cave that's a lot closer to the things that you need to survive. So I like to look at these places as though they are my possible home, not just an archeological site, you know, to try to make it more present. At the risk of undervaluing the perspective of the people who actually lived in Hawaiian days in shelters like this, their perspective is probably incomprehensible to me, frankly. It all depends on what you're raised with, ultimately. And yet, I feel like at least I'm making an attempt to honor and respect that perspective when I come out into places like this. And just as I wouldn't appreciate it if someone came to my cabin and burst open the door and threw down their wet clothes on my bed and took a snooze, ate all my food and, you know, watched TV for a couple of days. You know, there's a sense of personal space that can easily be violated, especially if that space is still being utilized. Now, a space like this, if it was ever utilized, maybe 200 years ago, it's really of no use to its original owners at this time. And yet it's, I think, worthwhile to acknowledge that there may be still a connection to those people present here, without going into a philosophic, religious, or spiritual guessing game, to at least acknowledge that there is perhaps a connection to people now long dead in some of these places, and that when I come traipsing through here with my backpack and camera and attitude, howly perspective and all of that, that it's important to take a time and pause and ask permission and treat a space as though it were someone's home that you're just knocking on the door of and perhaps going into for shelter out of a true need, or even out of curiosity, but that in doing so you're circumspect enough that you will not disturb, rearrange, take, impose your identity upon. I don't think we need any graffiti artists out here for any reason. So that's what I try to do, and that's what I encourage other people to do if they're going to come hiking with me, at least, is to show some respect for all spaces, but specifically the ones that perhaps other humans have lived in and have still a connection to. But truly all spaces have their hard to put into words, have their essence that also deserves respect. Perhaps the easiest way to justify that respect is to note that in giving respect to a person or an animal or a place, that act of humility that we experience is actually in itself a blessing upon the one who's giving it. There's nothing sweeter than humility. There's nothing more endearing about a person than their ability to be humble. That's what invites someone who doesn't know you to want to know you more, that they sense in a welcome humility in your presence. And that's why I think it's beneficial, regardless of your philosophical stance, to practice asking permission when you come into a space, because it does you so much good to be humble. And if by chance there were any entity in that space, that humility would make you appear much more charming, and perhaps to your benefit. So I think it's good advice, and that's the way we do it around here.